Russia's inclusion here comes from a report by Verisk Maplecroft, which is the name of a company, but a fantastic set of words. It's a risk analysis and forecasting company which ranked Russia as the 10th most corrupt country in the world. Football fans will already be familiar with the controversy surrounding their World Cup 2018 bid, in which they won by allegedly buying the votes of FIFA delegates, but may not be aware of the close ties between the Russian government and the contractors hired to build the infrastructure for the Sochi Winter Olympics in 2014. Couple those with the imprisonment of Alexei Navalny, a candidate for the mayor of Moscow and one of Vladimir's biggest critics, it's probably a coincidence, and it's not hard to see why Russia makes the list. Eritrea rocketed up Transparency International's list of the most corrupt countries in the world this year, moving from 25th up to 9th, and although many people have never heard of Eritrea, it comes in with a corruption score of 18, with a rating of 100 being the least corrupt. Although it's a small and relatively poor country, Eritrea is in a constant state of flux. After finally opening its borders to foreign business and investment and privatising some state-run assets, the door's been flung wide open for officials and other power brokers to take advantage of their positions for personal gain. Due to their low level of development legally, economically, and politically, there's every chance that these problems will just continue. There are few countries in the world which have experienced as much political and social upheaval as Libya over the last decade. As part of the Arab Spring, Libya overthrew the reign of Colonel Gaddafi, but the unrest in the country has continued. To this day, Libya still has no formal government, and there's still fighting ongoing between the rebels and the loyalists to the old regime. This power vacuum has allowed corruption to snake its inky black tendrils around the country, with corrupt military leaders and arms dealers moving in to take their piece of the action. Not only that, the administrators who are currently responsible for Libya's vast oil fortune have been accused of gross mismanagement. Given that oil accounts for around 90 to 95% of Libya's revenue, perhaps problems will continue for a long time to come. Economically, Uzbekistan is a fairly sound prospect, especially when considered next to most of the other countries on this list. However, most of the country's power resides in its executive branch, specifically with President Islam Karimov. Karimov, who's been the president of the country since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, has been accused of taking foreign companies looking to invest in Uzbekistan to task for not following local customs and laws, and is even thought to have bribed organisations in order to invest. Sharing a border with Iran, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, it's safe to say there are safer regions in the world to be in. Turkmenistan's authoritarian president, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, which is a very difficult name to say, often described as being someone closer to being a dictator, has, like his Uzbek counterpart, been in charge since the fall of the Soviet Union, and it's this power struggle which has made Turkmenistan so vulnerable to corruption. Its vast oil and gas reserves are controlled by the government and are used to supplement the nation's economy and line the pockets of those government officials responsible for trading them. In fact, the misuse of Turkmenistan's state funds have driven many investors away from the country. The pullout of US and coalition forces in Iraq left a desperate power vacuum, with various religious creeds fighting for control over the nation, including ISIS from Syria, who have seen an opportunity to seize power in this troubled nation. There's little doubt, however, that Iraq numbers among the most corrupt countries in the world, as war profiteers, arms dealers, and industry plunderers move in from all around the world, intent on exploiting the vast natural resources which the country has. Although it's only been a country for about 4 years, South Sudan has seen a raft of corrupt politicians move in and try and corrupt its fledgling governmental structures as the undeveloped country struggles to come to terms with its newfound independence. Many South Sudanese do not feel part of the nation. In fact, there are around 200 ethnic groups which make up the country's population, and this is another issue for the government, who try to bring them towards nationhood. Add to that the fact that international oil companies are exploiting the South Sudanese, with around 85% of them engaged in unpaid labour, and you have a country with some pretty major issues. Afghanistan is another recently war-torn country whose corruption is reaching a profound peak. The country has always been difficult to take over and control, with further recent instabilities being caused by the West's intervention in the country. But with a significant amount of the world's heroin supply found in the country, it isn't difficult to see why Afghanistan ends up being a bit of a corrupt power broker's haven. The situation isn't helped by the state of the country's government, which struggles to extend its rule to every area of the nation, and given that it's reputedly rife with corruption itself, thanks in no small part to former President Hamid Karzai, it's hard for many Afghans to really take them seriously. Thanks to South Sudan leaving the country and taking their vast oil reserves with them, the economy of Sudan has shrunk significantly, leaving the door open to widespread corruption. With nearly 65% of Sudan's population living below the poverty line, the ruling NCP have put in place a number of policies which will only serve to continue dragging Sudan backwards. And finally, we have a tie. North Korea's appearance at number 1 will come as little surprise to most of the dynasty of corrupt, inept dictators dragging the country back to the Dark Ages, literally in some cases as much of the country is without regular electrical supply. While it's known that North Korea operates prison camps for its own people, very little is known about its inner workings, and therefore much of its corruption is just presumed. Somalia, on the other hand, might come as a slight surprise, with most of the country's notoriety coming from the Somali pirates, who take to the high seas in less of a swashbuckling way and more of a speedboat and AK-47 and kill everyone alive. The country is run by different competing clans who have pretty much done away with the laughably loose central government system. Only 29% of Somalians have ever enrolled in school, and the life expectancy is a mere 55 years. With no planning for social programs or nationwide infrastructure, it's very unlikely that things are going to change for Somalia anytime soon.